How often do we hear stories about people who, on the outside, seem to have everything going for them, and then they seem to throw everything away in one way or another? You see it when they fall into unhealthy lifestyles and behaviors, and occasionally it even ends in suicide. The question is why? You know, so many people, so many articles have been written on this kind of subject, you know, about why people who seem to have everything still are so unhappy. You know, there was once a reporter who decided to pursue this, and so he decided to ask some law school graduates, most of which were some of the most outwardly successful people you could imagine. He asked them if they were happy and if they were satisfied with their life. And so from the outside, many people would see these men and women and figure they had it all. They had a great education, went to great schools, were making great money, they have, you know, probably a great place to live, all that they could ask for, they want or nothing. Yet many of the responses in the interview painted a different picture of what they felt their life was like. And there was one response that stuck with me, one which really goes along well with the homily and with the readings today, was from one successful lawyer. One successful lawyer was dissatisfied with his life. He was disappointed with the dream that he had pursued and to a great extent achieved everything that he tried. And he described his life like this. He said, "It was if I had climbed to the top of a very tall ladder, only to find that I had leaned the ladder against the wrong wall." Think about that image for a while. That's a powerful image. And I wonder if much of our dissatisfaction that many or most of us feel from time to time is not precisely for that same reason. Because we keep struggling to climb a ladder to the top of a wall that in the end doesn't mean very much, or doesn't provide us with what we really need in life. Things that have meaning, things that will last, eternal things. So each of the readings today invites us to consider a topic that many of us would probably like to ignore, whether it be the famous line from our first reading by Kohelet from the book of Ecclesiastes, "Vanity of vanities, everything in life, all of life, all things are vanity." Or the voice of St. Paul in the second reading of the letter to the Colossians when he said, "Think of what is above, not of what is on the earth." Or how about the powerful words of Jesus from the Gospel passage of St. Luke, when he says, take care to guard against all greed, for though one may be rich, one's life does not consist of possessions. And then he goes on to say, you fool, this night your life will be demanded of you. It seems pretty clear to me that the three readings in one way or another are cautioning us about the spiritual dangers of wealth and an over-attachment to material things. Most people don't like to hear this message. We like to ignore it because too often it sounds like another instance of the have-nots picking on those who have, as if there is something inherently wrong with having a good career or really wanting some nice things. But we can't ignore the fact that Jesus made this point over and over again in Scripture, emphasizing the need for a healthy attitude towards things of this world. And of course, today's readings all point us in that same exact direction. And so with that in mind, I just want to make two simple points. Points which will hopefully invite us to honestly reflect on the teaching of Jesus and what that teaching might mean for you and for me. So first, while it might seem at first glance that Jesus is only talking about material wealth, we should not try to understand this teaching in such a narrow way. Using an over-attachment to material things as an example, that allows Jesus to make his point clearly in a way that all of the hearers can understand. The greed that he addresses, the runaway of ambition to get all that we can get, extends far beyond monetary and material things. It refers to anything that we actively pursue in this life and which becomes an obstacle to living the life that God calls us to, which is a life of mercy and generosity and compassion and love. So in other words, when we go after things as if this life on earth is all that there is, we most certainly are straying from the path of faithfulness and holiness. And so in faith, we need to ask ourselves, what is there currently in my life which I am assigning too great of an importance? What is it that is getting an unhealthy amount of my attention or effort? And what am I pursuing with great ambition that doesn't really much matter or simply will not last? And then secondly, we are not cautioned against an over-attachment to things of the world because of what it does to God. But rather, God cautions us in this regard because of what it ultimately does to us, and then consequently to those around us. God needs absolutely nothing from us. However, he does want the very best from us. He does want us to flourish in incredible ways. He does want us to embrace life to its fullest, exactly in line with the way that he created us. He knows that if we overemphasize earthly things, if we focus all of our effort on the bigger and the better and the more, it's like a rat race that will eventually just almost always have us disappointed, always have us longing for more, always leave us with a certain emptiness inside. We'll find ourselves like that attorney who thought he had the world by the tail, but in reality, it was the world that had him. St. Augustine had probably one of the most famous lines that is so appropriate for us today. You remember the life of St. Augustine. He went around trying to find the meaning of life and purpose and happiness there, and he did everything, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever, in pursuit of this. And finally he came to this conclusion: my heart is restless until it rests in thee. Today is a perfect day to glance up and take a look at whatever ladder you find yourself climbing, and whatever in life is getting most of your attention and most of your effort. And then we need to ask ourselves a question, one in which will have real life consequences for how we experience this life. Is the ladder of mine leaning against the right wall? And that is the wall that is the person of Jesus. Or is it leaning against someone or something else? And if our ladder is resting on the Lord, then we can rest assured that the steps that we are taking each and every day are drawing us closer and closer to our God. Life is too short to waste on things that don't really matter that much. Rather, let's be sure that we plant our feet on holy and eternal things, things that allow us to take those steps of kindness, those steps of mercy, those steps of generosity and love, and allow us to climb to new heights of joy, of peace, and of communion with our Lord.